Here's the opening chord to Jerry Goldsmith's score to Alien. Welcome to
Keith Horn's Chord of the Week.
Jerry Goldsmith is one of the great film composers of all time, and he wrote one of the most iconic chords in all of film music history. I might even argue one of the greatest chords in all of music history because of its uniqueness. And it's the very first chord that you hear from the main title music. Here it is again. Now, this is not the first chord of the film. We don't hear this chord until a minute and a half into the main title. And I'll talk about why in a minute, but first, let's take a look at this chord. Here's why it's unique. First, let's listen to it. What makes it unique is the interval structure. It's a bunch of stacked minor sevenths. Now, some would say it's not even a chord because it's so far removed from the traditional triadic approach that even gives us the word chord. But for our purposes here, we can define a chord as a collection of more than two pitches, no matter where those pitches are or how far apart they may be. So our chord here of stacked minor sevenths, in some way, it's kind of the inverse of what Debussy would do. And Debussy used whole tone scales and whole tone harmony a lot. So a whole tone scale is just major seconds or whole tones stacked one on top of another, and it's completely symmetrical. And it doesn't have a pitch center. It doesn't have a tonic, right? And if you listen to something like La Mer, you hear a lot of chords like this. Or like this. And those all come from using the whole tone scale. And Debussy used the whole tone scale pretty extensively in the harmony that you can derive from the whole tone scale. And it was one of his main contributions to the breakdown and the dissolution of functional tonal harmony at the end of the 19th century. Now, if we take a whole step and invert it, instead of C, D, we go D, C, it's a minor seventh. So it's important to know that the interval inversion is at play here. The inverted interval of a major second is a minor seventh. And here, if I was to play a whole tone scale descending from C like this, C, B flat, A flat, G flat or F sharp, E, D, C. And if I were to start down here and play that exact same order of pitches, but go to the right, ascending, C, B flat, A flat, G flat or F sharp, E, and D. Same six pitches, different order. That's the Alien chord. Now, because this is a film score, the next question for me is, what does this chord mean? What kind of emotion does this chord elicit? We already know what the movie's about. It's right there in the title, right? So I guess it's meant to evoke fear, a sense of like foreboding threat. And traditionally, film composers might use a close-voiced cluster, like something like that, to trigger fear and the disorder and the chaos that you find in this dissonance. Usually does the trick, or something that you just literally a cluster that usually does it. That evokes that kind of fear because there's disorder in there. But Goldsmith here, he uses this wide voiced approach and still creates dissonance, but he does it through a sense of ambiguity. And because of that, we're not quite sure how to react to this chord because the meaning of it is uncertain. It's unknown, and nothing is more frightening to us than the unknown. Here's a clip of Goldsmith talking about how he prefers to score stories that take place in space.
I always think of space as being the great unknown and not as terrifying, but questioning. And so there's an air of romance about it. And that's why I like doing Star Trek, because it's very romantic and it paints space that way instead of all the weird things and all that. And I guess I approached Alien that way. There was this air of mystery, but there was sort of a beauty to it and the unknown. And I thought, well, let me play the whole opening very romantically and very lyrically.
He refers to space as the great unknown, but still having some romanticism to it. Now, interestingly, this is the same year that he scored Star Trek the Motion Picture, 1979, and that more romantic approach works really well for that film. But for Alien, that is not what Ridley Scott wanted. He wanted it to be more dissonant, more avant-garde. And he achieved it in two ways: by making Goldsmith rewrite a bunch of music cues, and two, by licensing a bunch of music from the film Freud, scored by Goldsmith from 1962. That score is much more modern and even gives hints of Bartok, and more on that in another video. So whatever it means, there's no doubt that the Alien chord from Jerry Goldsmith deserves to be called a chord of the week.
Yeah. Who this? This beat. Yo, who this? Yo, who this? Who this?